my home studio engineers. Thank you so much for checking out the Home Recording Network, and welcome back for day 28 of this 30-day journey to better home studio mixes, in which we've been kind of going through a song that was mixed and tracked in my home studio. And like I've done in all the other videos, here is a clip of the song we've been going over.
These kings and queens, they all fall, headless back into destined unaware, just what will be done, looking for treason and overtake the throne and sink to the bottom on our own.
All right, so if you watch the day 21 video, I showed how I would typically set up my mix bus in a mix like this before we actually started mixing vocals. So we would kind of be mixing into all the plugins on the mix bus until this point. Well, once I get the vocals finished, that's when I would actually start to take a deeper dive into the mix bus to see what changes would need to be made. All right, so if we take a look at our mix bus, we have 5 plugins on there. The last plugin is just a metering plugin. It's bypassed. It's not doing anything to the mix. But what I'm going to do here is just bypass all our plugins and then sort of go through them one by one and just enable them so you can hear the difference. Now, all of these plugins together have a very big impact on the mix. But one by one, the change is very subtle, and that's the way it should be. I don't think we should ever be looking for one plugin to completely enhance our mix. All of that should be done in the mixing stage. We should already have a great sounding mix by the time we hit the mix bus. But like I said, none of these plugins are doing heavy lifting. It's basically all of them together that really change the sound. So I'll bring them in real quick here.
These kings and queens, they all fall, headless back into oblivion.
Let's take a look and see what each one's doing. So as we went over in the other video, we have the virtual mix bus, which is a virtual console emulation that saturates our mix overall. And really, for me, what it does is enhance all the transients. I love the way the drums sound through this. This is actually on the drum bus as well. So let's just bypass Revival here, and then we'll show you the difference with the virtual mix bus in and out. And remember, this is very subtle, but listen carefully.
These kings and queens, they all fall, headless back into oblivion.
Yeah, and it's almost better to start with it on and then take it away, because you can really hear how much the mix loses with this off.
These kings and queens, they all fall, headless back into oblivion.
It's almost like we lose some energy right there. So in this stage, when we're checking our mix bus, we're making sure that we're not driving into any of these compressors or saturation emulation plugins too heavy. This is your chance to check all that to make sure all your settings are right. Now let's move on to Revival here. With Revival, we talked about this plugin a lot in the vocal chain video. So this is high-end and low-end harmonic distortion. And I'll use this if my mix needs more low end or more high end. It's that simple, just like I do on vocals. I don't like to go too crazy with this stuff on the mix bus, but if I need to bump the low end by a tiny bit, sometimes I'll bring the thickness up. But here we only dialed in some of the shimmer, and let's see if you can hear the difference in that.
These kings and queens, they all fall, they all fall. Headless back into oblivion.
It's really doing a nice job on the cymbals and everything that's really high up in the frequency spectrum. Next, we have just the black Box Hg2 that we're running through, all on the default settings. This is a really great saturation unit. And when they first came out, I wanted to buy one so bad, but they were like $3,000, right? And when the plug-in version came out, I of course jumped on it. So what I'm going to do here is I'll flip this to off, and then I'll bring it in for you so you can hear what it is doing.
These kings and queens, they all fall, they all fall. Headless back into oblivion.
This is just a great all-around saturator, and here you can choose to saturate the whole frequency spectrum or just the low or just the high. And most of the time I just leave it on flat and see how it sounds, and it does a great job on your mix and just enhances the sound. Now for compression, we're using the API 2500, which is a great compressor for your mix bus because it works in stereo. Well, most bus compressors work in stereo, but here you can unlink the sides so that the left and the right channel aren't compressed the same amount. So when you throw like the SSL bus compressor on there, it is compressing both the left and the right equally. Well, we don't always want that, right? Because there might be something louder in the left that isn't in the right, and we don't want both sides to get compressed the same. Here, I usually just set it to 60% there. And for bus compression, my attack and release are usually the same. They're always set at 30 millisecond attack and then the 0.1 release. So if I'm using the SSL bus compressor, same exact settings. And I do use that compressor a lot as well, but I like to try that one and this one out on my mix. Sometimes I'll even use both in the chain, but it just depends on what I think is making the mix sound better. This is supposed to be some overall glue for the mix, and it's working mainly on the transient of the drums. If I'm mixing a song with MIDI drums in it, I usually won't even put a compressor on the bus at all because those drums are usually pretty compressed already. But here we're just getting some gentle compression. And again, I'm not going for a lot of compression here.
These kings and queens, they all fall, they all fall. Headless back into oblivion.
We're hanging around 3 dB of gain reduction at the most, and this is actually pretty aggressive for me on a bus compressor. But in terms of the attack and release here, I see a lot of people setting this to 10 milliseconds and going a lot quicker. The engineers that I've learned from have always just kept this wide open at 30 milliseconds, fastest release. That way you're not hurting the mix at all, not hurting the transients at all, just trying to keep the mix intact here. Again, we've done all this work up until this point to get this mix sounding great. We don't want to over compress this and hurt the mix. The ratio on your bus compressors are usually very small. I'll range anywhere from 2:1 to 4:1. Nothing special there. So let's move on. We have the virtual tape machine with the 1/2-inch 2-track 15 IPS, and we're on the FG 456. let's bring this in and out. So I'll bypass it here, bring it in.
These kings and queens, they all fall, they all fall. Headless back into oblivion.
Really just coloring and warming the mix up, and that actually makes just a huge difference. With the 1/2 inch setting, you also get a big bass bump, which is why I like to mix into this just to make sure, my kick drum and my bass are right in the mix. I don't like to turn this on at the end and be surprised by a huge bass bump from the tape machine. And again, this is your chance to make sure you're not hitting these plugins too hard, because something like this wouldn't sound great. Right? We don't want to completely distort our mix. So this is your last chance to, make sure all these are sitting right. Maybe try increasing the input or bringing it back a little bit and seeing how that sounds on your mix. Now, the last plugin that we have on here is the BX Digital version 3, and this is a mid-side processor. But don't get confused with all of the knobs on here. I'm actually not doing any EQ in this mix with this processor. All I'm doing is enhancing the stereo width by 30%. And what this does is basically just turn up the volume of the sides of your mix, right? It makes your mix sound wider, because the only thing that's better than a louder mix is a wide mix. So I will bring this plugin in, I'll bypass it right here. I'll bring it in so you can hear the difference, and then I'll start really expanding the width, and then I'll come back and talk about that a little bit.
These kings and queens, they all fall, they all fall. Headless back into oblivion. These kings and queens, they all fall, they all fall. Headless back into oblivion.
Now, when you're using a stereo width plugin like this, and you're trying to judge how loud your side should be, I have a little trick for you. So I'm going to pull up this BX meter, which allows me to throw this mix into mono. When I'm trying to figure out how loud my sides should be, what I'll do is I'll start with the mix in mono and listen in mono. And then when I bring the sides in, I want them to be slightly louder than the middle of the mix. So let's say on a scale of 1 to 10, let's say your mono mix is at a 5. When you bring in the sides, I feel like they should be maybe at an 8 in comparison. So let's check that out. I'll start with it in mono and bring in the sides.
These kings and queens, they all fall, they all fall. Headless back into oblivion.
Yeah, so I feel like we got an extra 3 points there with the side added in. But if I need them quieter or louder, I'll just go back to the BX Digital and adjust the stereo width there. Now, once I'm at this point in the mix and I have my mix bus all figured out, not really done yet, because that's when I like to do some intense referencing with other tracks. And I have a video about that, so I will link that. But I would definitely at this point do some intense referencing and bring 2 to 3 other songs in the same genre into this mix. And I try to make them recent songs, so I know I'm trying to stack up against something that was recently released, and just kind of judge what the balance is like. Do I have enough low end? What's my kick drum sound like in comparison to this other song? What do my vocals sound like in comparison? So I'll usually walk away from the mix at that point and then come back and really do some intense referencing with a couple songs after I've been able to rest my ears. Now, tomorrow for day 29, we're going to go over the final step before mastering. And this is a step that home studio engineers skip over all the time, and it really keeps their mix sounding like an amateur mix because we are really not done yet. Guys, don't forget to like and subscribe if you learned anything here today. It just helps me to reach more people out there that need help like you. But that's it for today. Happy mixing, guys. Hey guys, if you like this video, be sure to download your free Ultimate Home Studio Mix Guide with your go-to EQ and compression settings for all your tracks. And also be sure to register for my free online mix training that I hold a couple times a week so that you can learn how to make radio quality music from your home without breaking the bank.